So this is the What Now. Let's begin with Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is in Beijing to join the two-day 2024 summit of the 9th Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. The summit is scheduled to start in the Chinese capital on September the 4th. The ambassador representing South Africa in China, Siyabonga Kwele, explained that there are new areas with a lot of opportunities, particularly for Chinese investors. Several African leaders, notably the chairman of the African Union Commission, Musa Mahamat, will lead their delegations to the summit. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres will participate as a special guest, and pertinent international and regional organizations will act as observers. The opening ceremony of the summit will feature a keynote speech by Chinese President Xi Jinping, representing the largest diplomatic gathering hosted by China in recent years. Moving out to Sudan, where the United Nations Humanitarian Office has revealed that at least 30 people were killed in northeast Sudan after a dam collapsed due to flooding. Large areas of the northern state are still experiencing heavy rains that have affected most of the state, causing the destruction of homes and infrastructure. For days, water has inundated the urban centers and main roads of the state, obstructing traffic and movement of citizens. Local reports expect an increase in the number of victims and house collapses in light of continued rains, overflowing streams, and weak local capacities to deal with floods and rain disasters. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Education has announced that due to heavy and torrential rains, classes in all levels of education in the state have been extended by 1 more week for the safety of the students of the state. And still in Africa, a non-governmental organization is calling for more proactive measures in addressing humanitarian challenges in Nigeria. The organization wants the state government to not only provide succor to victims of crisis, but also tackle the root causes of the crisis. We have more in this report.
The Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says over 7.9 million people are in need of humanitarian protection. These numbers have been on the increase lately due to pockets of conflict and displacement, food insecurity, disease outbreak, flood, and closure of some IDP camps. The United Nations also says about 4.8 billion people are facing food insecurity. The United Nations put the funds to address this food insecurity at about $306 million. Not many international donors have responded since the UN raised request for this fund. The United States government, for example, recently donated $27 million for this cause. This is the reason this humanitarian non-governmental organization believes with individual and corporate response from Nigerians and its government, a lot could be achieved in addressing the pitiable situations of Nigerians in humanitarian needs. At this event, HAM recognized individual Nigerians and wives of governors who have taken it upon themselves to help poor and displaced Nigerians.
We use this when Nigerians decide to stop politicizing every single help that is coming in from government. Like I said, the government are doing very well. But there is this common say I believe in. Go and ask your governor what he's doing with the funds. Go and ask your governor what he's doing with the palliatives. Some governments, I'm not really pointing fingers, but there are some governors that when the palliative gets to their states, they start looking for their political appointees and all and start sharing it too. But these particular palliatives are not meant for political appointees. For you to become a political appointee, at least you are earning money from the government. We are talking about those people that are actually in absent poverty, that don't even believe that there is a government in Nigeria.
The organization wants other Nigerians to find a means to help displaced persons within the community in order to drastically reduce poverty in the country. Muyo Thomas, TVC News, Abuja.
We turn our attention now to the Middle East, where a general strike is taking place in Israel after protests over what is seen as the government's failure to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis took to the streets to demand a ceasefire. This is believed to be the largest demonstration since the start of the war 11 months ago. Businesses, schools, and transport across Israel are being affected by the general strike. We'll have more in this report. Tens of thousands of Israelis have hit the streets, calling for a ceasefire deal. Israel's main labor union called for a strike after 6 more captives were found dead in Gaza. This comes after Israel Defense Force spokesman Daniel Hagari said in a press briefing on Sunday that its forces on Saturday recovered the bodies of 6 hostages in an underground tunnel in the Rafah area, southern Gaza. Scuffles between the protesters and security forces were reported on Sunday night in one of the largest anti-government demonstrations in Israel since the Gaza war began nearly 11 months ago. The protesters chanted and demanded that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reach a ceasefire with the Palestinian group Hamas to bring the remaining captives home. Many Israelis blocked roads in Tel Aviv and demonstrated outside Netanyahu's office in West Jerusalem. Holding up banners and photos of hostages and chanting slogans, the protesters in front of the Israeli Parliament building in West Jerusalem asked the Israeli government to take action and reach agreements with Hamas. This comes as the latest round of ceasefire negotiations in the Gaza Strip, which resumed in mid-August, once again reached a deadlock. Many protesters believe these are intentional obstructions by certain people, including Israel Prime Minister, who are preventing the conclusion of a ceasefire agreement. Despite the uncertainties, protesters still hope there will be progress in the ceasefire negotiations. In another development, a polio vaccination campaign kicks off in the Gaza Strip on Sunday, as over 2 million people in the Palestinian enclave are still grappling with a severe humanitarian crisis due to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The campaign started in central Gaza. The second phase is scheduled for September 5th in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, with northern Gaza set to be covered on September 9. The Palestinian Health Ministry, in collaboration with the World Health Organization, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine, Refugees in the Near East, and the United Nations Children's Fund, has established vaccination centers in hospitals, clinics, schools and shelters. The United Nations says it delivered 1.2 million doses of the oral polio vaccine, targeting approximately 640,000 children. Each child from birth to 10 years old is to receive 2 doses. Fixed vaccination sites will operate constantly, while mobile ones will be set up based on the population density of specific areas. Hamas has agreed to pause Gaza fighting for the vaccination to take place. However, Israel has refused to implement a complete ceasefire, confirming only a humanitarian corridor for vaccination personnel and designated safe areas for vaccine administration during certain hours. Reports say Israel continued its airstrike on Gaza on Sunday, as some residents in Gaza did not dare to go to the vaccination sites until they were safe.